A very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Design Meetup 2.0, powered by IxDF Kerala and co-sponsored by Experion Technologies. I would like to type everyone's role. If you are a beginner, let me know in the chat window. And our for topic of today is topic which we are going to do is about grid system in the Figma in designing. We have grids of all sorts of content arrangement, whether you are designing a website, a magazine, or a mobile app. We have column grids to align content horizontally, baseline grids to align bodies of text, and soft and hard grids to describe how strictly we adhere to them. Our speaker, Susmi Sunil, a UI designer, will be taking us through a comprehensive guide to 8-point grid system in user interface design. And about her, Susmi Sunil is having over 2.5 years of experience in design. She is also passionate about branding, creating logos, illustration, and creating characters, and also digital illustrations for web and mobile apps. She is from Adur, a beautiful part of Pathanamthitta district in Kerala. She also loves singing and currently learning a new instrument, the violin. And that's Susmi for you. For the better ease, for ease of a better experience, we have muted the audience mic during the session. Put in your questions in the chat window, although we will be having an exclusive Q&A session after the webinar, where the audience can interact and discuss. A recorded version of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel. For those of you just joining us, welcome to Comprehensive Guide to 8-Point Grid, Craft Perfect Interfaces with Stronger Grids by Susmi Sunil. Over to you, Susmi.
Thank you, Prinju, for introducing me. Thank you for joining me today. I hope all of you are safe out there. I'm going to turn off my video for better presentation. So let's jump into our session. How to create a stronger layout with 8-point grid system. The smallest unit of a digital image or a graphics that can be displayed and represented on a digital display device is what a pixel means. Here you can see some images in which help you to understand the standard resolutions like 1x, 2x, and 3x. In this image, 1x is called 100 pixel into 100 pixel, and whereas the version of 2x would be 200 pixel by 200 pixel, and the 3x would be 300 pixel into 300 pixel. Let's now discuss about pixel grid system guideline. First of all, let's see the anatomy of grid system. What you can see in this image is the anatomy of point grid system, in which one block is 8 into 8. Row grid is used to align item vertically, and the column grid used to align item horizontally. We can align elements in this grid block, and this process is called item. Pixel grid is a good way to maintain consistency, align different UI elements, and it will help from getting lost in pixels while making alignments resulting in faster design decisions. For example, if you are working with a developer, this will make both your work easier, especially as the product and UI grows. Getting to 500 artboards without some sort of spacing in place is difficult to manage. Pixel grid block act as the fundamental measuring unit for different UI elements that helps to define margins and manage spacing between the elements. Different designs can have different pixel grid, but I would say 8 pixel grid works the best. Now let's see how this can be used in UI design. Use an 8 block pixel grid to resize or align the item. Manage spacing. Alignment with a progression of 8 pixel grid makes faster alignment decision, which keeps consistent and clean interface. Here in this image, you can see a card which is aligned to an 8 pixel grid, and everything like margin, padding, and the distance between two elements is the multiple of 8. An image is aligned to left, and as you can see that this is a multiple of 8, and which has 72 by 72 pixel, and the margin here is 16 by 16, and then a icon created with 24 by 24, and so everything here is aligned with a multiple of 8. Moving to 8 pixel grid. Google Material Design use 8 pixel grid system for Android device and most responsive web design, which means all the spacing, size and scale of the elements are made with multiples of 8, such as 8, 16, 24, 32, and so on for all padding margin between each elements. Sometimes I probably use 4 if you need to go in tight. And other designers are happy enough using 5, 10, 15, 20, and whatever works for you. The point here is you are building a basic spacing consistency. So 8 pixel grid works perfectly for most of Android device that has the resolution in multiples of 8, and iOS don't have any grid system. iOS resolution is not a multiple of 8. Here in this image, you can see that everything aligned with a multiple of 8. Have you guys ever wondered why it is 8 rather than 10? If Apple is using an 8 pixel grid in its design system, that is human interface, and Google also in their material design, for us as a product designer, it has lot of importance, especially if the product we are working on is an application to be run on mobile device. We must clarify that this does not force us in any way to work with 8-point grid. But we must take into account that we are designing a product that in the end will run on an operating system. So if the user opens our application and finds a similar visual environment like margin, size, padding, and everything placed in that would be a multiple of 8. It is a good basic unit to work with. The numbers like 4, 8, which is easily multiplied, and they provide flexible and consistent user experience. So, what is the need of 8-point horizontal spacing? It improves data consumption through better legibility, provide customer with a more consistent user experience. it drives consistent scalability, and it also conveys meaning by giving element a visual hierarchy. If you are a designer, your output will just look better and overall make process easier. As the number of screen size and the pixel density continue to increase, it is harder for designers to space and scale elements consistently across an experience. The majority of screen size are divisible by 8, and which makes an easy fit. Why we use 8 as a perfect number? This is because of two reasons: precise control and item alignment. Let's move on to precise control. As you can see in this image, 8 block pixel grid can be further broken down into 4, 2, and 1. And in the second image, 10 block pixel grid or maybe similar will end up with 5, 2.5, 1.5, so on. When items are aligned or sized with decimals, they look hazy and distorted at the edge. Most of the popular screen size and the standard iOS or Android assets can be divided into 8 block pixel grid. Here in this image, screen size which are not divisible by 8, like 375 with iPhone 8, should have a fixed margin and a flexible container, which is called item alignment. Moving to hard and soft point grid. What you can see in this image is the anatomy of point grid method, in which the point is the basic building blocks and the smallest unit available on the screen. A group of point which is called a factor, and as you can see in this image, the anatomy further broke down into 3: padding, margin, and dimension. Coming to padding, padding is a space inside the element or a container. Margin is the space between two elements or a container. Dimensions represents the width and height of the elements. Let's talk about point grid method. Point grid methods has two types: hard and soft grid method. In hard grid methods, elements are placed into a grid pattern defined in 8 pixel increment. As you can see in this image, the elements are sectioned and placed in relationship to a higher container element in the hierarchy. In the soft grid method, you simply approach 8 pixel increment between the individual elements in your design. In type scale, baseline are the invisible horizontal line where the words sit. As you can see in the image, in hard grid method, the space between two text elements is measured from the baseline and not the line height bounding box. In the soft grid method, the space between two text elements is measured from the bounding box and defined by the respective line height. In grid interface, both the hard and soft grid can be used to design interface. The hard grid is more rigid while the soft grid is more fluid. Soft grid resembles how elements are positioned or sized using the actual code, which makes the soft grid an ideal choice. Most of the popular screen size are divisible by 8. Elements are positioned and sized to 8-point grid can be further fractioned without encountering decimals. As you can see in this image, everything are the multiple of 8. Soft 8-pixel grid is flexible and adapts with changes in 8 pixels. Solution for 8-point solution for iOS soft 8-point grid. Use a variable outer margin in a way so that the active area becomes a multiple of 8. For example, at 1x, iPhone X have the iPhone X resolution width is 375. We can create a outer margin of 16 to left and 15 to right, so that the active design area will become 344 and which is divisible by 8. So quickly, let's see how to create a grid 8-pixel grid in Figma, and also we can see how to create how to see. Let's see the difference between hard and soft grid. And first of all, open the Figma and hit the frame. And now I'm going to select desktop 1440 into 1024, and I'm selecting that frame. And now select the frame and go to layout grid, and I'm going to hit this plus icon. As you can see that a grid of 8 pixel, a grid of 10 pixel appears, and I'm going to change that layout grid settings to grid. I'm changing that to column, and here I'm changing that count to 12, and type keep it as stretch itself, and I'm going to change that margin to 70. Because I'm giving 70 is because we can get a nice breathing space for our landing page. And gutter, keep it as 20 itself. And again, I am clicking this layout grid, and you can see that it automatically overlays multiple layers. And I'm going to change the grid layout settings to rows, and now I'm giving that count to 1000. You can just give it as your wish. It depends upon the page height and what you are going to design. I'm going to change the type to top, and height we can just give either 4, 18, or 8 or 16. 4 is used in mobile applications, and 8 and 16 is probably used in desktop applications. So here I'm going to give height as 8 and changing that gutter to 0. I'm just zooming in, and you can see that the horizontal and vertical grid appears. Now I'm just going to create a rough header and a hero image. As I draw in this frame, you can see that it automatically snaps to the grid, and it will be a multiple of 8. See, 80, height is 80, which is a perfect number, and it is divisible by 8. and I'm just quickly duplicating it, and it automatically snaps into the grid. And I'm just slightly changing that color to something like this. And I just duplicate that. See, everything snaps perfectly in the grid. So in this way, you can create a perfect grid system. Now moving to hard and soft grid example. Um, uh, in this two, we can't see much difference between these two, right? And I'm just going to this left frame is hard grid example, and the right one is an perfect example for soft grid. And moving to this hard grid example, here in this we can see a header and an H1, a text and an hero image and a line and an other area, a share area, and a body copy and an inline image. So um, uh, now I'm going to toggle on spacing bundles which I have did before, and I'm just toggling on. As you can, when I toggle on this bundle, as you can see that the distance between these two is not a multiple of 8. This 50 might change to 48, and the distance between these two should change to 38 should change to probably 40 or 32, like that. And the distance between these image and this text is 52, which should change, which should be changed to 48. And coming to this down area, the distance between the line and this image is 32, and which is a perfect number and divisible by 8. And coming to this area, the distance between these two is 16, and which is also quite good. And coming to this side, the distance between these two is 48, and which is quite good. And in this hard grid method, some are in the good consistency, and some are not. And let's check what happens in the soft grid. And I'm just doing the same, like I'm toggling on the spacing bundle. And as you can see that everything here is a multiple of 8, which is perfect, and which gives consistent and um, consistent to use. So over to our presentation. Let's jump into Android layout guideline. First of all, let's start by talking about the layout of an Android device. In this picture, you can see, in this picture, you can see the anatomy of an Android layout with the height of 640 dp and a width of 360 dp. The height of the top status bar is 24 dp, and the margin is of 16 dp for each sides. When pixel density is 160 dp, 1 dp is 1 px. For a width of 360 dp, use margins or gutter of 16 dp, and which have 4 columns. 4 columns means 3 gutters. The remaining width for the remaining width for the 4 column uh, 4 columns. Now let's talk about mobile grid. Here in this image, you can see a mobile width of 360 dp, the margin of 16 dp on each side, and also a 3 gutters. Margin are space that sit between content and the edges of the screen. They are defined with a fixed width. Usually we use 16 pixel, but for some app we use 20 or 24 pixel margin. All the sizes of UI elements and the spaces between them are a set of multiple of 8. It is easy to divide most of the mobile device into 8 pixel grid. The content is placed inside the column within margins. These help us make decisions on where to place an element and make a well-structured interface. The column helps developers to create consistent layout across multiple screen size. Most of the screen size, most common number we use is 4, but you can try with 6 or 8. The width is defined by percentage rather than the fixed value. Gutters. This separate the content in the column. The recommended value of the gutter is also 16 pixel. Less than 16 pixel is usually not enough to keep elements visually separated. Maybe 8 pixel might work sometimes. On a tablet at a breaking point of 60 dp, the layout uses 8 column with 48 dp margin on both sides. Both side is 24 dp, and it have 7 gutters with 24 dp. Column width is defined using percentage so that the content can flexibly adapt to any possible screen size. Now let's see how to use grid in Android mobiles. As I told you before that in mobile UI has 4 grid as shown in this image. First image which is placed within 4 column, and the second one which is placed with 2 column, and the third one which is created with 1 column content. Uh, 8 pixel grid for buttons. How to create a button with 8 pixel grid? The numbers like 176, 64 and 32 can be divided by 8. 176 divided by 8 is 22. 64 divided by 8 is 8, and 32 divided by 8 is 4. So in this way, your design is consistent and cohesive. When you follow this method and apply it to other elements, your design will just look beautiful, clean, and easy to understand. Moving on to typography system based on 8 pixel grid. Font size may vary, however, their line height might be a multiple of 8. When it comes to type, use the 4 pixel base grid along with the 8-point grid gives you much more harmonious vertical rhythm throughout your design. Simply align your type to baseline grid of 4. which uses a line height value that is a multiple of 4, 8, 12, and so on. Why we use 4? Well, for me personally, I have found that the scaling by baseline in multiples of 8 in the past has just pushed to the text too far apart when we are working with a certain text type. 4 pixel base grid gives you more fine grained control and brings much more better result. It can be tricky to get your text to fit in an 8 pixel grid, so it is better to use a 4 pixel increment for your font size and line height. Then use 8 pixel grid layout for heading and paragraph. Here are some examples of typography. As you can see in this image, everything, the distance between each element is a multiple of 8. Moving on to vertical rhythm. It is a concept that originated from point typography. In vertical rhythm, we try to keep vertical space between elements on a page consistent with each other. Vertical rhythm is simply when a body of the text is aligned to evenly spaced horizontal line to make it more cohesive and easy to read. This is often done with the help of a baseline, which is a common denominator used to create the consistent spacing. What is vertical rhythm and why is it so important? In practice, we often visualize the baseline in print design by overlaying our page with a baseline. In this image, you can see the before and after implementing vertical rhythm. On the right side, you can see the perfect alignment and which is easy to read. Moving to the second one, um, the text is very difficult to read. What is baseline grid? A baseline grid allows us to track the vertical distance between type and other object in a design, and I highly recommend to use one to achieve a consistent vertical rhythm. However, remember that the native mobile experience and web browsers measure typography in slightly different way. How do you measure by a baseline? The baseline is where the letters rest. This is a common term used in a print design and many classic design programs. Native application experience are generally built off the baseline. The measurement of the space from baseline to baseline is called leading. Moving on to icon grid design guideline. If you are a designer, you have probably encountered an icon grid before. Perhaps you were tasked to create an app icon or an iOS app icon for iOS or Android, or you have contributed a set of UI icons. Perhaps like me, in previous, I don't have a good knowledge in icon that how I could create this icon. Anatomy of icon grid design. The key canvas size of an icon is 24 by 24, in which that the icons are created with a size. In usage, however, the material system icon may be scaled to a range of size. In this image, you can see a bounding area in which icon is exposed at the same size. In no-go zone area, no share is placed in this area to reduce visual clutter. In clearance area, icon is surrounded by adequate and to match the legibility metrics. Note that the key canvas size of the icon grid is 24 by 24, and which means that the icons are created at this size. In usage, however, the material system icon may be scaled to range of sizes. As you can see in this image, icon can be done with either 18 by 18, 24 by 24, 36 by 36, and 48 by 48 pixels. Here you can see some of examples that I have created with 8-point grid. Now I'm going to show how to create a perfect grid for icon creation. I'm just clicking the frame, and I am just changing that width and height to 24 by 24. Select that frame and go to layout grid, and I'm hitting this plus icon here and change that grid to 1 pixel. As you can see, a red line goes, and which is the grid that we given. And now I'm going to draw a square width of 18 by 18, and I am just toggling off the fill, and I'm just adding a stroke to it, and change that 1 pixel stroke to 0.1, and I'm just adding corner radius to 1. And now I'm just copying and pasting on top, and I'm just pulling 1 pixel inside from both sides and pushing that towards both ends, and taking that 18 by 18 pixel square block and copy, and I'm pasting on the top, and I'm just pushing that towards inside and just 1 pixel outside. And I'm going to draw a line towards the center and change that pixel to 0.1. And make sure that this perfectly aligned to center. And now I'm just duplicating and placing this icon to something 3 pixel towards right and 3 pixel towards left. And now I'm just copying and pasting that on top, and just rotating it. And now I'm going to create an ellipse on top. and change that fill to stroke. Again, I'm giving 0.1 and just duplicating this circle and pasting on the top and just enlarge that size and make that as a group and just changing that color to something like blue. In this way, we can create a perfect icon grid. Now I'll create an icon to show how this works. I'm just duplicating this frame and I'm just decrease their, sorry, I'm just decreasing that opacity and I'm going to create an ellipse on this top and change that to stroke. And now I'm going to create a rectangle here and I'm just duplicating that and just I'm going to adjust the node. Change that color to black and I'm just toggling off the icon grid. Change that stroke to center and give stroke width to 2 pixel. And I'm just duplicating this and I'm just making a filled version of this icon. Change that color. See, we have created a perfect icon with outline and a filled version of icon. And in this way, we can create a perfect icon with a pixel grid. So, yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, the variety of screen size and the pixel densities has continued to increase, which can make the job of assets generation more complicated. Using an even number like 8 to space and size elements in your design makes scaling for a wide variety of wide variety of devices much easier and more consistent. The basic principle of the 8 pixel grid is that you use the multiple of 8, that is 8, 16, 24, 32, 40 and so on for all margin, padding and sometimes the dimensions of elements inside your design. Thank you.